This week on The Record, culture wars in the classroom. How voters responded in St. Charles in heated races for the local school board. Protecting kids online. What happened to one teen who bought drugs on Snapchat? Which state wants to add parental controls to social media? How AI could threaten this November's election? It's all coming up right now. Welcome to The Record. I'm Mark Maxwell. If politics is the art of finding the proper balance in society, elections are the thing that help us regain our footing after losing equilibrium. Our political lexicon is full of references to that give and take, swing states, the pendulum swing. In other words, whenever a party in power pushes too far one way, the public reins them in and corrects that overreach at the polls. For decades, political analysts would often look to House districts, races for Congress, to try and read the direction of the national mood. These days, we can zoom in even farther to contested, contentious races for seats on school boards. And in St. Charles, it appears the early signs of a shift are setting in, an apparent pushback against a board that struck down an anti-racism resolution and then censored and removed certain social justice standards from elective Black Studies classes in the Francis Howell School District.
Let them learn!
Black history is American history, and I think it's important that it's taught at our schools.
The only way they're going to put these courses back is if they water down and whitewash Black history, because they don't want people to know the real disparities that Black people have gone through.
And I'm appalled and I'm very disheartened for our students.
I think it's unbelievable for them to discredit my history.
I think it's actually sickening.
We are not going to back down. We are not going to allow them to continue to promote their anti-Black, anti-equity, anti-inclusion procedures.
The newest member-elect of the Francis Howell School Board, Carolee Owens, is now on the record. Do you expect that your election will shift the makeup or the direction of the board?
I think that would be very difficult because there will still be a 5-member majority. So Stephen and I will just be trying to work with them collaboratively and show them that that's the way you're supposed to run public schools, that you don't listen to politicians, you listen to the students, the teachers, the administration, the parents, so that you can all come together to make the best decisions for everyone.
Some of your opponents, who won roughly 45% of the vote combined, they said that they had heard from white kids who were made to feel ashamed of their identity in class. Those candidates would have upheld the recent decision to censor or remove certain questions about race or identity from high school curriculum. Would you put those questions back in?
I would have to look at all the questions. I don't know what all the questions were, but I personally did not hear of any students feeling like that.
I have a copy of them here with me. These social justice standards from the Southern Poverty Law Center would have asked high school kids if they can, quote, recognize traits of the dominant culture, my home culture, and other cultures. So I'll put the question to you. How would you answer a question like that? What are the traits of the dominant culture?
I would have to think long and hard about that because I haven't seen that question before. The way I've always looked at social justice is the way that it's taught in my church. And this sounds totally different. So I would need to get more immersed into this so that I could make a good decision on that.
I mean, what are the thoughts or feelings that you have when you hear a question like that? If you put yourself in the student's shoes, what images are conjure up in your mind?
Well, if they're referring to whites as the dominant culture, I don't know if I like the wording, the way that's worded. Like I said, I'd have to look at this more carefully. But from the students that I had spoken with that took different courses, they said they really enjoyed the courses. So, there's all different kinds of students, and we need to listen to all their voices.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Joining us now on the record is Stephen Blair, the other candidate to take that seat on the Francis Howell School Board in the weeks to come. Thank you for joining us. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch editorial board analyzed the race that you just ran together with Carolee and said that it's a hint that a political fever is breaking. Your win. Is that fair to say?
So what I experienced was that there's a number of people who were not involved in politics before this election who decided to step up and say whatever had been happening was too much.
Why did they get off the sidelines?
For some of them, it was because they had heard some accusations, especially towards teachers, that were unfair. And they also heard a lot of different focus being made towards topics they didn't think were critical topics. They wanted more of a focus on education versus culture war issues.
Such as?
Talking about bathrooms, talking about the letters like CRT or DEI or anything else along those lines. Anything else that makes for big, hot-button, hot-headed, hot-blooded conversations is what drew attention over the last year.
So there's a long list of things, but one of the other questions asks students this, quote, to explain the short and long-term impact of biased words and behaviors and unjust practices, and laws and institutions that limit the rights and freedoms of people based on their identity groups. What laws or institutions limit the rights or freedoms of people based on identity?
Right. So first of all, I appreciate the question. I've not seen that question particularly.
But these are the questions that the school board had been posing to students in high school.
Those questions have not been publicly shared. Even when they removed the standards, they did not say these are the 20 questions we're aiming at. I will tell you that there are certain things that are leaning. There are certain things that tend towards one group over another, and it's okay to be able to say that that's what's happening.
Such as? Such
as if you look at a lot of different social studies, you will see that there are some areas where a person has a more likely chance to get hired if they have one name versus another name. And so there's a bunch of different studies here and there that would tell you about that. I would say inherently in every single group of people, there's some part that is not
But that's
ideal.
not a law or an institution, that's a personal bias.
Well, we would say that to some degree, but I think you and I had a conversation about Chicago, and in Chicago there is a bank that was the first bank to actually give a bunch of home loans to black residents. And the fact that that's part of the story of this particular bank tells us that there was something before it. So there are institutions, whether it's
You're talking about
financial
historic
institutions,
redlining, which happened across the country.
across the country, right? And so whether it's within churches, whether it's within financial institutions, whether it's in schools, there are examples out there of a different set of expectations or a different set of challenges that one group has to face versus the other. Sure.
You're arriving at the school board, you already acknowledged the 5-member majority that don't necessarily share a lot of your views. What message should, because they're not all up for election immediately, some of them are staggered.
Right.
What message should they take from the voice of the voters on Tuesday night?
Right. The first thing is I think there's a lot of overlap, and I think sometimes we should identify that. We don't have to hate the people on the other side. So the first thing I think is to change the culture of this whole word grenade that goes from one side to another, that people don't like that. They don't want to be part of that. I believe they need to take this message of putting education over politics and make this priority, and to stop attacking teachers, both in behavior and the withholding of any kind of support for teachers when other people are attacking them. I think the board majority should take this as a message that says the population, even in St. Charles, is wanting a moderate description of education where the solutions are not found on either extreme, but the best solutions are usually found somewhere in the middle.
Back to the Black Studies questions, those 2 questions I posed to you. Do you think, having heard them now, do you think that they are something that can foster healthy discussion? Would you like to see them back in the curriculum?
Again, I think those conversations could be included within the elective courses. Again, these are elective courses, and parental rights should be able to say that
And if that
some
question is
students
before
want
you
it,
right now, how do you vote?
I would vote yes to have them included. I was against their removal on December 21st. I was against the method on how they were removed and how they were described and how they were removed. I was against the fact that it was added to the agenda the day before, and when the students wanted to walk out before it, that the Political Action Committee decided to tell all of their supporters to email admin, so the students who were walking out were properly punished. The idea of a board that's more interested in punishing students instead of listening to students is a problem, and I don't think it reflects the view of the mass majority of St. Charles County.
All right, the newest member-elect of the Francis Howell School Board, Stephen Blair, thank you for joining us.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
We're back in just a moment. Sammy Chapman was 16 years old when he opened Snapchat and started talking with someone who sold him drugs. Sammy didn't know those drugs were laced with fentanyl, and he later died. Now his parents are supporting a proposal in Illinois to regulate big tech social media companies. If a teen 17 or under uses Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, or Facebook, they could be subject to parental controls that would monitor their activity for any of those warning signs. We went to Springfield to discuss that idea with House Democrat Jennifer Gong Gershowitz. How would you define or describe the danger that parents feel when they know their kids are out there online, no longer just surfing the internet or in a chat room, but they're in these apps like Snapchat and who knows who they're talking to?
Yeah, well, what I'm hearing from parents as a parent myself, I think the thing that is most scary is that you have no idea who has access to your children. In the days before social media, you would set up a play date with another child. You would know who your children were interacting with. Now, kids have access and more frighteningly, predators and people who should not have access to your children can have access to them from anywhere in the world 24/7.
If you proposed an idea to have an automatic signal or flare for questionable or controversial content for an adult, that would raise a number of privacy concerns.
Sure.
Why is it good to have that for kids?
Well, I think as a parent, we all recognize we have a responsibility with respect to keeping our kids safe. Children are not mini adults, they're children. There's a reason why we have a responsibility as parents and why there are consequences for failing to keep kids safe. It's this parental responsibility that has become very, very difficult in a social media age. And I think it's important that we view this in the context in which we're looking to regulate this. Right now, social media has really become the wild, wild west. Anyone in the world has access to your child 24/7. Social media companies are curating and selling your children's data, and in many instances know more about your child's interactions online than you do as a parent.
And certainly, critics of big tech have suggested that they have put kids in untenable situations, but what is their responsibility here under your regulation, your proposal? What should these social media companies have to do?
In my proposed legislation, social media companies are not moderating content. This is literally the kind of thing that just enables a parent, if they choose, to get a warning if their child's life is at risk.
So they opt in.
They opt in.
And when they opt in, how does it work?
So the way this works is similar to the way anyone's banking app might work. It's just an interface that allows a third-party app to get data from a social media company, and it would send up then a flare, a warning, if a child were at risk from a sexual predator, from drug addiction, or self-harm.
Is there a belief or understanding that these companies, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, that they already have this warning, this flare? Do they already know the risk is there and they're just not saying something, they're not alerting someone?
Well, I think we've all seen very limited parental controls that are embedded in each of these apps, but it doesn't do anything to help a parent understand the nature of the threat that their child might be experiencing, whether it be cyberbullying, whether it be a drug dealer who has agreed to bring drugs into your child's home. So I think the kind of parental controls that we have seen embedded into the apps themselves have just been wholly inadequate to keep children safe and to give parents the tools that they need to keep them safe.
Social media is one example. AI is another of technology moving much faster than the speed of government. This legislature has promoted media literacy in high schools, but I think kids and adults can trust what they see with their eyes less and less as AI evolves. What is Illinois doing about it?
We're working on making sure that we give parents options to protect their children online through Sammy's Law. We are also working on name, image, and likeness protections so that if your image is used in a way that you did not authorize, that you did not consent to, that you have an ability to seek legal recourse in the civil courts.
So if someone takes my voice or your voice and tries to mimic it online, even through a joke, they can be sued? That's the solution here?
So it would only be for the narrow uses where your image or likeness were used either for a commercial purpose or put into a deepfake pornographic video, for example. So
what about reputational hazard or damage?
Reputational hazards is a concept we're still working on. I think it's an important one. We're also looking at what happens when misinformation and disinformation is impacting our elections. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in this space. I think what we're starting with are the things that are of greatest concern to our constituents. Our children making sure that we don't have non-consensual sexual images that are manipulated and turned into pornographic videos online. We're also looking to prevent the commercialization of people's image and likeness without someone's consent.
We're just 6 or 7 months away from an election. Are there any protections right now that would keep politicians from using AI with a perverse incentive to confuse the public?
I have not seen anything other than standard fraud laws, defamation, false light, which we have seen inadequate to prevent somebody from using AI, like you saw in the situation where somebody used AI to purport to be Biden telling voters not to vote. That is a situation in which people were
Tricked.
That's right.
But in Illinois, you could do that and get away with it right now.
Right now, unless it constituted fraud or conspiracy to prevent a vote, I would argue that we need to do more to ensure that that precise conduct is clearly unlawful.
You focused a lot on child protections, and you mentioned in one of your earlier comments this troubling issue of child porn and deep fakes. It's a heavy topic and something that a lot of people don't want to stomach or spend a lot of time considering, right? But there's a legal question. A lot of laws that criminalize this or prevent this protect the victim, the child. But if the child was only imagined by AI and was invented basically and didn't actually exist, what can a prosecutor do to prevent that from spreading?
Yeah, the state has an important interest in ensuring that we do not normalize the abuse of children, and in particular the sexual abuse of children. Our child pornography laws have always recognized conduct that portrays children being abused is criminal in nature. What we need to do is ensure that our laws evolve with current technology. Today, we are increasingly becoming at a point in time when you cannot tell the difference between a real image and a fake image. And so we need to ensure that our laws are amended to ensure that deepfake pornographic images of children are similarly criminal.
But to bring a criminal charge in criminal court, you have to have a victim who can stand there and say, I was the victim of this crime perpetrated. When that victim was fabricated and didn't ever exist, then how does the state get after that?
Child pornography laws have always been enforceable by law enforcement, even when you haven't had a particular identified individual who has come forward. And I think that's what's incredibly important to understand here is the state has an interest in protecting the societal harm that occurs when we normalize child sexual abuse. And so in the instance of child pornography, a child victim doesn't have to come forward. The charge of sexual abuse of a child would be distinct from child pornography. You can be charged with child pornography without having that actual victim necessarily be identified or come forward.
And the Attorney General's office already works in this space and does some thankless work in trying to go through the darkest corners of the internet to prevent this kind of stuff from spreading. Under your bill, what would change about his power, authority, or reach on this topic?
We're starting to see more and more child pornography that is difficult to discern whether or not it is an actual child or whether it's AI generated. My bill would ensure that the Attorney General could prosecute a case of child pornography, whether it were AI generated or whether it were actual images.
Should county prosecutors also have that power?
Yes, I think, the conversation around ensuring that law enforcement and our prosecutors have the ability to crack down on child pornography, whether that's AI generated child pornography or whether it's actual child, it's pornography depicting an actual child, is incredibly important to protecting society's interest in not normalizing the victimization of children.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
We continue the conversation on KSDK.com with extended interviews. You can also text the word record to 314-425-5355 to find them. Welcome back. A beautiful thing happened this week. The gates of baseball heaven opened at the Cardinals' home opener. And in honor of America's pastime, let's check the record. It was President Herbert Hoover who once said, next to religion, baseball has furnished a greater impact on American life than any other institution. The game has endured a lot, persisting through world wars. In 1942, when a lot of young athletic American men were enlisting to join that fight, President Roosevelt wrote back to baseball's commissioner and assured him, "I honestly feel it would be best for the country to keep baseball going." It did, even as some of its best traded dugouts for trenches or uniforms for dress blues. As Marines stormed the beaches of Normandy that same month, Stan Musial was enlisting in the Navy. That's all for us this week. We'll see you right back here at the same time next week. Until then, we're off the record.